The alarm system screamed through every corridor of New Haven Colony. Director Alan Price ran toward the communications center, his heart pounding in his chest. Behind him, the sounds of explosions echoed across the settlement. The Vraken had found them. New Haven was supposed to be safe. The colony sat on Kepler 442b, a distant planet far from the major space routes. 300 humans lived here, mostly scientists and their families. They studied the planet's unique ecosystem and sent their findings back to Earth. Life had been peaceful for 2 years. Now everything was falling apart. Alan burst through the doors of the communications center. Danny Hayes sat at the main console, his fingers flying across the controls. Sweat dripped down his face as he worked. The young man had been a communications officer for only 6 months, but he was their best hope now. "Are you broadcasting?" Alan asked. "Yes, sir. Sending on all emergency frequencies. The message is going out to every known species in this sector." Danny's voice shook slightly, "But I don't know if anyone's listening." Outside, another explosion rocked the building. Alan grabbed the edge of the console to steady himself. Through the window, he could see fires burning across the colony. The Vraken ships hung in the sky like dark birds of prey. Smaller craft descended from them, carrying more raiders to the surface. Lisa Grant's voice crackled over Alan's radio. "Director, we're falling back to the secondary perimeter. We can't hold the outer walls anymore." Lisa was the colony's security chief. Before coming to New Haven, she had served in Earth's planetary defense forces. She knew how to fight, but the colony only had basic weapons. They were scientists, not soldiers. The mining equipment and construction tools they had converted into weapons were no match for the Vraken's military hardware. "Pull everyone back to the residential sector," Alan ordered. "Get the civilians into the underground shelters." "Already doing it," Lisa replied. "But Alan, we need help. We can't hold them off forever." Alan knew she was right. He turned back to Danny. "Keep broadcasting. Someone has to hear us." The distress signal went out across space at the speed of light. It carried a simple message: humans in danger requesting immediate assistance, coordinates attached. The signal reached the first alien listening post within hours. The Zenthari Empire received the transmission first. Their monitoring station at the edge of human space picked up the distress call and forwarded it to their high command. The Zenthari were a proud species, tall and covered in metallic scales. They considered themselves the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. They had rules for everything, including responding to distress calls. Commander Vectis studied the message on his screen. The coordinates indicated a planet in what the Zenthari classified as uninhabited space, but the message clearly came from a species called humans. Vectis had never heard of them. He pulled up the galactic database and searched for information. What he found made his scales ripple with unease. The humans came from a planet called Earth. The database had limited information, mostly gathered from long-range observations. But what was there shocked him. Earth was classified as a Class 12 deathworld, the highest danger rating in the system. The planet's gravity was crushing. Its atmosphere was a volatile mixture of gases that would poison most species. The surface temperature swung wildly between extremes. Massive storms raged across its surface, generating winds that could tear apart standard habitats. The oceans teemed with predators. The land supported creatures that killed for food, and somehow humans had evolved there. They had not just survived, but thrived on this nightmare world. Vectis immediately forwarded the information to his superiors with a recommendation: do not respond. Any species that could survive on such a planet must be dangerous. They could be violent, unpredictable, possibly hostile. The Zenthari had no interest in making contact with Deathworlders. The Yillian collective received the same message. The Yillians were a peaceful species, small and fragile by galactic standards. They lived on low-gravity worlds with carefully controlled climates. They had built their civilization on logic and caution. Researcher Silith analyzed the human distress call with growing concern. Like the Zenthari, the Yillians pulled up information about Earth. Unlike the Zenthari, they looked deeper into the available data. What Silith found terrified them. Humans were persistence hunters. They chased their prey until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. They could run for hours in heat that would kill a Yillian in minutes. Their bodies could heal from injuries that would be fatal to most species. They consumed the flesh of other animals, something most civilized species found barbaric. The Yillians held an emergency council. The debate lasted for hours. Some argued they should help any species in distress. Others pointed out that humans were unknown and potentially dangerous. What if helping them led to an aggressive species learning about Yillian space? What if the humans decided the Yillians would make easy prey? In the end, fear won. The Yillian Collective voted not to respond to the distress call. On Kepler 442b, days passed with no response. The situation grew worse with each passing hour. The Vraken pushed deeper into the colony. Beth Morgan, the chief engineer, used her knowledge of the colony's systems to slow them down. She rigged fuel cells to explode when the raiders passed. She flooded corridors with steam from broken pipes. She collapsed tunnels to block their advance. But it wasn't enough. The Vraken commander, a brutal creature named Throg, had patience. He had raided dozens of colonies across this region of space. He knew that eventually, the defenders would run out of supplies, ammunition, and hope. Then the colony would be his to plunder. Danny Hayes kept broadcasting the distress signal. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. His hands trembled from exhaustion. But he never stopped. Every few hours, he updated the message with their current situation. The updates grew more desperate. Day 3, still under attack. Casualties mounting. Please, anyone, we need help. Day 5, running low on everything. They're in the residential sector now. If you can hear this, we're running out of time. Day 7, this is Communications Officer Danny Hayes. If anyone receives this message, please know that we tried. We fought as hard as we could. Tell Earth that New Haven didn't give up. Lisa Grant gathered her remaining defenders in the underground shelter entrance. They had maybe 24 people who could still fight. Farmers, scientists, engineers, all armed with whatever they could find. Beyond the heavy doors, they could hear the Vraken digging, cutting, trying to break through. Alan Price stood with them. He held an old pistol in his hand, though he had never been a good shot. Around him, parents hugged their children. Scientists who had spent years studying peaceful things prepared to fight to the death. I'm sorry, Alan said quietly to Lisa. I'm sorry I brought you all here. I'm sorry no one's coming. Lisa checked her rifle one more time. We knew the risks, Director. Space is dangerous, but we're human. We don't quit. Above them, in orbit, the Vraken ships continued their assault. The raiders had nearly complete control of the surface now. Soon they would breach the final shelter. Throg was already planning how to divide the loot. None of them knew that 800 light-years away humanity had heard the call. And humanity was coming. The signal reached Earth's orbital defense network at 3 in the morning. Station time. Lieutenant Paul Dixon was drinking his 4th cup of coffee when the computer flagged an incoming transmission. He almost missed it. The signal was weak, degraded by distance and interference. But the encryption code was unmistakable. Human colony distress call. Paul sat up straight, suddenly wide awake. He ran the signal through the filters 3 times to make sure. Then he hit the emergency alarm. Within minutes, Admiral Kyle Ross was in the command center. The Admiral was 52 years old with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He had spent 30 years in the United Defense Fleet, rising through the ranks during humanity's expansion into space. He had fought pirates, settled territorial disputes, and kept Earth's colonies safe. But he had never received a distress call from a colony under direct attack. Play it again, Kyle ordered. The command center fell silent as Danny Hayes' voice filled the room. The young man's exhaustion was clear in every word. The desperation in his final message made Kyle's jaw tighten. How far? Kyle asked. 800 light-years, sir, answered Commander Steve Palmer, the fleet's navigation officer. Kepler 442b, we have a research colony there. 300 people, according to the records. How long to get there? Steve did the calculations quickly. With our fastest ships pushing the engines to maximum, about 48 hours. Kyle turned to face the room. Every officer was watching him, waiting for orders. We sent those people out there. We told them they'd be safe. We promised them that Earth wouldn't abandon them. His voice was hard as steel. Get me every ship captain we have. We're going to bring our people home. The next 18 hours were chaos. Earth's orbital shipyards burst into activity. Ships that had been in routine maintenance were rushed back to combat readiness. Crews were pulled from leave and assembled. Weapons were loaded. Supplies were packed. Marines prepared for deployment. The flagship was the Valiant, a massive battle carrier that could hold 3,000 people and carried enough firepower to level a small city. Captain Jake Sullivan had commanded the Valiant for 5 years. He was a calm man who rarely raised his voice, but his crew knew he was absolutely fearless in combat. Jake stood on the bridge of the Valiant, watching the organized chaos through the viewports. Around his ship, the fleet was gathering. Heavy cruisers Liberty, Defiant, and Resolute took up positions in the formation. Destroyers from Earth, Mars, and Europa filled out the fleet. Fighter squadrons launched and formed up in perfect patterns. 47 ship, said Commander Rachel Stone, Jake's executive officer. This is the largest fleet we've ever assembled. Hope it's enough, Jake replied. He opened the ship-wide communication channel. All hands, this is the captain. In 2 hours, we jump to faster than light speed. Our destination is Kepler 442b, where 300 of our people are under attack. We don't know much about the enemy. We don't know what condition the colony is in. But we know one thing for certain. No human stands alone. No human gets left behind. We're bringing them home. In the medical bay, Dr. Nina Carter was preparing for the worst. She had been a trauma surgeon in New York before joining the fleet. She had seen terrible injuries and saved countless lives. But this would be different. This was a combat situation. She had to be ready for anything. Set up the extra beds, Nina ordered her staff. Get all the medical supplies loaded. I want blood supplies doubled. Prepare the surgical rooms for continuous operation. Her assistant, a young medic named Greg Walsh, looked nervous. Doctor, do you think it will be that bad? Nina didn't sugarcoat it. If we're lucky, we get there in time and most people are okay. If we're not lucky, we're going to be working for days straight saving whoever we can. In the Marine deployment section, Commander Chris Bennett was briefing his troops. Chris was built like a tank, with muscles earned from a lifetime of training. He had been a Marine for 20 years and had fought in every major conflict humanity had faced in space. 2,000 Marines stood at attention in the massive hangar bay. They wore their combat armor, matte black with individual unit markings. Each Marine carried enough weapons and ammunition to fight for days. Their armor could withstand small arms fire and enhance their strength. Built-in computers gave them tactical information and targeting assistance. Listen up, Chris's voice boomed across the hangar. We're going into an unknown situation. The enemy is called the Vraken. We don't have much information about them except that they're raiders who prey on isolated settlements. That means they're used to fighting soft targets. They're not ready for us. He paused, making eye contact with the Marines in the front row. When we get there, we move fast and hit hard. Protect the civilians. Secure the colony. Eliminate the threat. These are our people down there. Some of them are scientists, farmers, families with kids. They've been fighting for over a week with mining equipment and hope. We're going to show them what real soldiers look like. The Marines roared their approval. Back in the command center, Admiral Kyle Ross was on a video call with Earth's government. The Secretary General wanted to know if this was the right move. 47 warships represented a significant portion of humanity's military power. What if it was a trap? What if Earth needed those ships for defense? Kyle's response was simple. We make this commitment now, or we tell every human colony that they're on their own. We tell them that Earth's protection is just words. That's not who we are. We don't abandon our people, the Secretary General agreed. The mission was approved. As the final preparations were completed, Kyle walked through the Valiant's corridors. He saw crew members loading supplies, checking weapons, running diagnostics on systems. Everyone moved with purpose. There was no hesitation, no doubt. This was what they trained for. He stopped in the observation deck, looking out at the fleet. 47 ships, the most powerful vessels humanity had ever built. Thousands of trained personnel, enough firepower to crack a planet's surface. All of it focused on one goal: save 300 people. Some might say it was excessive. Some might question the cost. But Kyle knew the truth. This wasn't just about 300 people. This was about the principle. Humanity protected its own, always, no matter the cost, no matter the distance. Admiral, all ships report ready. Rachel's voice came over his communicator. Kyle took one last look at Earth, hanging in space like a blue marble. Somewhere on that planet were the families of the colonists. Parents, children, friends, all waiting and hoping. He wouldn't let them down. All ships, this is Admiral Ross. Engage faster than light drives on my mark. He waited as the acknowledgments came in from every ship. Mark, the fleet jumped. Space twisted around them as they exceeded the speed of light. The stars stretched into lines, then faded into the strange non-space of faster-than-light travel. They were committed now. In 48 hours, they would arrive at Kepler 442b. In the troop deployment bay, Marines checked their gear one final time. In the medical sections, doctors and nurses reviewed emergency procedures. On the bridges of 47 ships, crews monitored systems and calculated firing solutions. And in the flagship's command center, Admiral Kyle Ross stared at the countdown timer. 47 hours, 32 minutes to destination. He silently promised the people of New Haven, "Hold on. We're coming." The largest military fleet in human history raced through the darkness of space. Behind them, Earth waited. Ahead of them, 300 humans fought for survival. And between them, the vast emptiness of space that meant nothing to a species that refused to leave anyone behind. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity really meant by loyalty. The Galactic Council chamber floated in orbit above Axiom Prime, a neutral world where dozens of species met to discuss trade, diplomacy, and peace. The chamber was a massive structure, with sections designed for species of all types. Some areas had thick atmospheres, others were filled with water. Some were heated to extreme temperatures, others kept near freezing. Despite their differences, all the council members had one thing in common today. They were terrified. Ambassador Kelvor of the Zenthari Empire stood at his station, his metallic scales reflecting the chamber's lights. In his 300 years of service, he had never seen the council so disturbed. Before him floated a holographic display showing sensor data from the edge of Zenthari space. "The readings are confirmed," Kelvor announced, his voice carrying across the chamber. "A massive fleet is moving through space at unprecedented speeds. Their trajectory is locked on Kepler 442b. Counselor Threx, a floating jellyfish-like creature from the water sections, pulsed with concern. "How many ships?" "Our long-range sensors count at least 40 vessels. Possibly more. They're moving so fast that our tracking systems can barely follow them." Kelvor manipulated the display, showing the fleet's path. At their current speed, they will reach the planet in approximately 40 of their hours. Silith, the Yillian researcher who had studied the human distress call, stepped forward nervously. The small creature's fur was standing on end with fear. "Ambassador Kelvor, we must assume these are the humans responding to the distress signal we received." The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. Representatives from a dozen species all started talking at once. Kelvor raised his hand for silence. "The Yillian is correct. We cross-referenced the fleet's origin point with known species territories. They came from a system the humans call Sol, the same system where the planet Earth is located." A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Every species present had seen the classification for Earth. Class 12 Deathworld, the worst possible rating. A planet so hostile that the fact any species survived there seemed impossible. "What do we know about their military capabilities?" asked General Corthan, a massive reptilian warrior from the Draken hegemony. Even this veteran of 100 battles looked uneasy. Kelvor brought up another display. "Very little. The humans have only been in space for approximately 150 of their years. They have colonies on several worlds in their system, and a handful of research outposts beyond. Until now, they have kept to themselves. But their ships," Silith interjected, pulling up technical data. "Look at the energy signatures. They're using fusion drives pushed to extremes we thought impossible. The power output from each ship is enormous, and their acceleration rates would crush most species under the gravitational force." Counselor Marex, a thin insectoid creature, clicked her mandibles in agitation. "Of course it would. They evolved on a high-gravity world. Their bodies can withstand forces that would kill us," Silith continued, their voice shaking. "I have been studying all available data on humans since we received their distress call. With the Council's permission, I would like to share what I have learned." Kelvor nodded. "Proceed." The holographic display changed, showing images of Earth. Beautiful blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. It looked peaceful. Then the images changed. Massive storms with winds reaching 300 kilometers per hour. Oceans filled with creatures that could swallow a Yillian whole. Volcanoes spewing fire and ash. Earthquakes that shattered the land. "Earth is not just dangerous," Silith explained. "It is actively hostile to life. Yet humans not only survived, they dominated their world. They reached the top of their food chain through persistence hunting. They would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. No other species on their planet could match their endurance." More images appeared. Humans running marathons across deserts, climbing mountains in thin atmosphere, diving deep into oceans, fighting wars in every climate imaginable. "They are adaptable beyond measure," Silith continued. They can survive in temperatures from below freezing to extreme heat. They can heal from injuries that would kill most of us. Their bodies produce adrenaline, a chemical that temporarily increases their strength and blocks pain during danger. And most terrifying of all, they are pack hunters. They work together with coordination that rivals hive species. General Corthan studied the images carefully. Show me their weapons. Silith hesitated, then changed the display. What appeared made several council members gasp. Weapons designed not for clean, efficient killing, but for overwhelming destructive force. Explosives, kinetic weapons, chemical agents, nuclear weapons. They have been fighting wars among themselves for their entire history, Silith said quietly. They have refined the art of warfare to a degree we can barely comprehend. And now, for the first time, they are united. One species, one purpose. And that purpose is heading toward the Vraken at Kepler 442b, Kelvor added. In another part of the galaxy, Vraken. Commander Throg stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bloodtaker. He was pleased with how the raid was progressing. The humans had fought harder than expected, but they were nearly broken now. Another day or two and the colony would fall. Then he could strip it of anything valuable and move on to the next target. Throg was a massive creature, standing 3 meters tall with 6 arms and thick armor plating covering his body. The Vraken were raiders and scavengers preying on weak colonies far from civilization. They avoided military targets and strong species. It was easier and more profitable to attack the defenseless. Commander, we're picking up strange readings at the system's edge, reported his sensor operator. A smaller Vraken named Throg barely glanced at the display. Probably just background radiation. This system is full of interference. Sir, the readings are getting stronger. Multiple contacts moving fast. How fast? Scree checked the data again, not believing what he was seeing. Faster than anything in our database. They're crossing the system at speeds that should be impossible. Throg finally paid attention. He walked to the sensor station and looked at the display. Multiple contacts, definitely ships heading directly toward them. How long until they arrive? At their current speed, less than 1 hour. Can you identify them? Scree worked the controls frantically. Negative. They're not using any known transponder codes. Wait, I'm picking up a transmission. It's on all frequencies, extremely powerful. Audio only. Play it. The bridge fell silent as a voice filled the air. It spoke in Galactic Common, the universal language used for trade and diplomacy. But there was something in the tone that made every Vraken on the bridge feel cold. Attention, all vessels in orbit of Kepler 442b. This is Admiral Kyle Ross of the Human United Defense Fleet. You are ordered to cease all hostile actions immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any ship that attempts to flee will be destroyed. Any forces on the surface are ordered to surrender. You have attacked human civilians. There will be consequences. Throg felt a chill run down his spine. Humans, the species from the Deathworld. He had ignored their distress call along with everyone else. It never occurred to him that they might have the ability to respond. How many ships? Throg demanded. Scree's voice was barely a whisper. Over 40 contacts confirmed, more appearing as they get closer. Sir, these aren't scouts or light vessels. These are warships, big ones. Throg made his decision instantly. Signal all ships. Prepare to retreat. Recall all ground forces. Sir, we can't recall the ground forces in time. They're spread across the colony. Then they're on their own. I'm not fighting Deathworlders for a colony that's already stripped of half its value. Throg turned to his pilot. Plot a course to the nearest jump point. Maximum speed. But even as the Vraken ships began to turn, trying to flee, they all knew it was too late. The human fleet was closer now. Close enough that the sensors could make out individual vessels. They were enormous. The smallest human destroyer was larger than Throg's flagship, and they were all heading straight for the Vraken position. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, real-time sensor data streamed in from observation stations near Kepler 442b. Every council member watched in silent fascination as the human fleet entered the system. The ships moved in perfect formation, their engines burning bright enough to be seen across light years. They're not slowing down, observed General Corthan with professional respect. They're going to engage at full combat speed. The Vraken are trying to flee, Kelvor noted. 3 ships are breaking orbit. 2 remain in place. 1 appears to be attempting to surrender. Silith watched the display with a mixture of fear and wonder. We should have answered their call. We should have helped them. It's too late for that now, Kelver said quietly. All we can do is watch and hope the humans remember who ignored them. The human fleet raced across the system toward Kepler 442b. Inside every ship, crews were at battle stations. Weapons were armed. Targeting computers locked onto the Vraken vessels. Marines prepared for deployment. Medical teams stood ready, and in the flagship Valiant, Admiral Kyle Ross gave one final order before the battle began. All ships, weapons free. Show them why you don't attack humans. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442b system. On the bridge of the Valiant, Admiral Kyle Ross stood with his hands behind his back studying the tactical display. 6 Vraken ships hung in orbit around the planet. Surface scans showed fires burning across New Haven Colony. Life signs were weak but present. Time to engagement? Kyle asked. 17 minutes at current speed, answered Commander Rachel Stone. Sir, 3 of the Vraken ships are breaking orbit. They're trying to run. Kyle's expression didn't change. Let them try. Launch all fighters. Destroyers break formation and intercept the fleeing vessels. Cruisers take the 2 ships holding position. Leave the 1 broadcasting surrender codes alone for now. Across the fleet, fighter craft launched from their carriers. Sleek vessels built for speed and precision, each one piloted by humanity's best. They formed up into squadrons and accelerated toward the planet. Behind them, the destroyers broke away from the main formation, their engines pushing to maximum as they chased the fleeing Vraken. On the Vraken flagship Bloodtaker, Throg watched in horror as the human ships closed the distance impossibly fast. His sensors showed weapons locks appearing on his ship. Dozens of them. The humans weren't even trying to hail him or negotiate. They were simply coming to kill. Evasive maneuvers. Throg shouted. Return fire! The Bloodtaker's guns opened up, sending plasma bolts toward the nearest human destroyer. The shots were accurate, but the human ship simply rolled, presenting its armored side. The plasma bolts splashed against the hull, leaving scorch marks but no real damage. Then the human ship fired back. What hit the Bloodtaker wasn't energy weapons or plasma. It was solid metal, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed by electromagnetic railguns. The projectiles punched through the Vraken ship's hull like paper. Atmosphere vented into space. Internal explosions ripped through multiple decks. Shields are down. Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7, screamed the damage control officer. Throg couldn't believe it. One shot. The humans had crippled his ship with one volley. All power to engines. Get us out of here! But the human destroyer was already firing again. This time missiles launched from its tubes. Smart missiles with their own guidance systems, each one capable of tracking and adjusting course. Throg's point defense systems tried to shoot them down. They destroyed maybe a third. The rest kept coming. The missiles struck the Bloodtaker's engine section. The ship shuddered as its main drive exploded. Without power, without shields, without any way to escape, Throg's flagship began to drift helplessly in space. It took 17 minutes for the Bloodtaker to die. The 2 other Vraken ships trying to flee lasted even less time. The human destroyers were faster, better armed, and piloted by crews who had trained for combat their entire lives. When it was over, 3 Vraken ships were nothing but expanding debris fields. The 2 Vraken vessels that stayed in orbit fared no better. The human cruisers Liberty and Defiant closed to weapons range and opened fire with their main batteries. The Vraken tried to fight back, but their weapons were designed for raiding colonies, not fighting warships. The cruisers' armor was too thick, their shields too strong, their firepower too overwhelming. In the Galactic Council chamber, every species watched the battle in stunned silence. The engagement had lasted less than 20 minutes. 5 Vraken ships destroyed, 1 captured, not a single human vessel even damaged. Impossible, whispered General Corthan. The speed, the precision, the raw power. How does a species develop such military capabilities? Silith knew the answer. They evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every day. They learned to fight or die. For millions of years, that was their only choice. On the surface of Kepler 442b, Alan Price heard the explosions in orbit. Through the shelter's ceiling, the sound of battle thundered across the sky. He grabbed his radio, trying to reach Danny Hayes in the communications center. Danny, what's happening up there? Danny's voice came back, filled with emotion that Alan couldn't quite identify. Sir, you need to see this. Oh God, you need to see this. Alan ran to the communications center, Lisa Grant right behind him. When he burst through the door, Danny was staring at his screens with tears running down his face. On the display was a tactical overlay of the space above them. Dozens of new contacts surrounded the planet. The Vrakan signatures were disappearing one by one. "Who is it?" Alan demanded. "Who's up there?" Danny turned to him, grinning through his tears. "It's Earth, sir. Earth came for us." The words hit Alan like a physical blow. Earth. Home. 800 light-years away, and they had come. He felt his knees go weak and grabbed the console for support. On the Valiant's bridge, Captain Jake Sullivan watched the orbital battle conclude. All Vrakan vessels neutralized or captured. Beginning surface operations, Jake opened the ship-wide channel. "All Marines, this is the captain. You are go for deployment. Bring our people home." In the Marine deployment bay, Commander Chris Bennett and his troops loaded into drop pods. Each pod was a armored shell designed to punch through atmosphere and deliver Marines directly to the combat zone. It was violent, dangerous, and exactly what was needed. Chris checked his squad leaders one final time. "Remember, there are still Vrakan on the surface. They're scattered and probably confused, but they're still dangerous. Protect the civilians, secure the colony, and try not to shoot any of our own people." The Marines locked their pods. One by one, the pods launched from the Valiant. They fell toward Kepler 442b like meteors, trails of fire marking their descent. The Vrakan on the surface looked up in confusion and fear as the sky filled with falling stars. The first pod hit the ground near the colony's main entrance. The impact crater was 3 meters wide. The pod's door blew off with explosive bolts, and Chris Bennett stepped out in full combat armor. He stood 2 meters tall in the powered suit, bristling with weapons. His armor's external speakers activated, broadcasting in English. "United Defense Fleet, we're here to get you home." Inside the shelter, Alan heard those words echo across the colony. He broke down crying. Around him, every human who heard it did the same. They had held on for 9 days. 9 days of fighting, dying, hoping against hope that someone would answer. And now humanity's best had arrived. More pods landed across the colony. 2,000 Marines deployed in perfect coordination. They moved through the ruins in squad formations, their armor's sensors identifying friendlies and hostiles. When they found Vrakan, the engagement was brief and brutal. The raiders were tough and well-armed, but they had never faced soldiers like this. One Vrakan warrior, a veteran of dozens of raids, fired his plasma rifle at an approaching Marine. The shot hit center mass. The Marine's armor absorbed it without even slowing down. The Marine raised his rifle and fired once. The Vrakan went down and didn't get up. It wasn't a battle. It was an extermination. Within 2 hours, every Vrakan on the surface was either dead or surrendering. The Marines secured the colony perimeter and began searching for civilians. When they found the shelter where Alan and the others were hiding, Chris personally opened the door. Alan stood in the entrance, staring up at the massive armored figure. "Who are you?" Chris removed his helmet. His face was scarred from years of combat, but his smile was genuine. "Marine Commander Chris Bennett, United Defense Fleet. We got your distress call, Director Price. Sorry we're late." Alan laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "Late? You came 800 light-years. How is that even possible?" "Because you're human, sir, and humans don't abandon their own." The Marines began evacuating civilians to the surface. Medical teams established triage centers. Dr. Nina Carter and her staff worked through the colonists, treating injuries and exhaustion. Most people were malnourished and traumatized, but alive. Jake Sullivan brought the Valiant into low orbit directly above the colony. The massive ship blocked out part of the sky, a steel guardian watching over the survivors. Shuttlecraft began landing, bringing supplies and evacuating the most seriously injured. Lisa Grant stood on the colony's wall, watching the organized chaos. Beside her, a young Marine named Kenny Mills was helping load civilians onto a shuttle. "How many ships did you bring?" Lisa asked. Kenny grinned. 47 warships, ma'am. Plus support vessels. This is about half of our total fleet. Half the fleet for 300 people? Yes, ma'am. Admiral Ross said if we didn't come, we'd be telling every colony they were on their own. That's not who we are. Lisa felt tears again, but this time they were good tears. Thank you. Thank you for coming. As the sun set on Kepler 442b, the evacuation continued. Humans helping humans. No one left behind. Above them, the fleet maintained watch, ready to destroy anything that threatened the survivors. And across the galaxy, other species watched and learned. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they were nothing like anyone expected. They were warriors, yes, but they were also saviors. The galaxy would never forget this day. 3 days after the battle, New Haven Colony was slowly coming back to life. Human engineers worked alongside the colonists to repair damaged buildings. Medical teams continued treating the injured. Marines patrolled the perimeter, making sure no threats remained. And in the temporary command center, Admiral Kyle Ross prepared to send a message that would change everything. Director Alan Price sat across from the Admiral, watching him review the communication he was about to broadcast. They were in what used to be the colony's administration building. Half of it was still damaged from the Vrakan attack, but it was functional enough. "Are you sure about this?" Alan asked. The council ignored our distress call. "Some people would say you don't owe them any explanation." Kyle looked up from his datapad. "This isn't about what we owe them. This is about making sure they understand who we are and what we stand for. The galaxy needs to know that humanity keeps its promises." He stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see Marines helping rebuild a collapsed wall while colonist children watched in fascination. Lisa Grant was teaching a group of young engineers how to reinforce defensive positions. Danny Hayes was working with fleet communications officers to restore the colony's long-range systems. "We came all this way for 300 people," Kyle said quietly. "Some species might see that as wasteful. They might think we're reckless or foolish, but I want them to understand that this is exactly who we are. We protect our own. Always." Alan stood and joined him at the window. "The Vrakan commander we captured has been talking. He said the raiders have been operating in this sector for decades. Dozens of colonies attacked, thousands dead. And the galactic species did nothing because most victims were from minor or newly spacefaring races." Kyle's expression hardened. "That ends now." An hour later, Kyle stood in the communications center. The room was crowded with officers and technicians, all working to ensure the broadcast would reach every corner of known space. Captain Jake Sullivan was there, along with Commander Chris Bennett. Dr. Nina Carter had come up from the medical bay. Even some of the colonists were present, wanting to witness the moment. "Signal ready, sir," Danny Hayes reported, broadcasting on all Galactic Council frequencies. "They'll hear this everywhere," Kyle nodded. He had written this message himself, spending hours making sure every word was right. This wasn't just a military report. This was humanity's first real communication with the wider galaxy. It had to be perfect. "Begin transmission." The message went out across space, carried by powerful transmitters that ensured it would be heard on every council world, every trading station, every listening post in civilized space. "This is Admiral Kyle Ross of the Human United Defense Fleet, broadcasting on all frequencies. 9 days ago, the human research colony of New Haven on Kepler 442b sent a distress call. They were under attack by Vrakan raiders. They asked for help." Kyle paused, letting his words sink in across light years. That distress call was received by multiple galactic species. According to our records, at least 6 different civilizations picked up the transmission. None of them responded. None of them sent help. None of them even acknowledged receiving the call. In the Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Kelvor listened to the humans' words with growing unease. Around him, other council members shifted nervously. They had all hoped the humans wouldn't mention being ignored. "We understand why they didn't respond," Kyle continued. "Humanity is new to the galaxy. We come from a world that other species classify as extremely dangerous. Perhaps they feared us. Perhaps they thought we were too primitive to warrant attention. Perhaps they simply didn't care." The Admiral's voice grew harder. "But when we received that distress call, we didn't hesitate. We didn't debate. We didn't form committees or conduct studies. We assembled the largest fleet in our history, and we came, because those were our people, and humans do not abandon their own." On the colony's surface, Lisa Grant listened to the broadcast with the other colonists, people who had spent 9 days fighting for survival, wondering if anyone would care. Now they heard their planet's military leader telling the entire galaxy that humanity had crossed 800 light-years just for them. Many were crying again. "We arrived to find 5 Vrakan ships in orbit and raiders on the surface. We gave them one chance to surrender. When they chose to fight or flee, we eliminated the threat. The battle lasted 17 minutes. Not a single human vessel was damaged. Our Marines secured the colony in under 2 hours." In his cell on the Valiant, the captured Vrakan commander Throg listened to the humans' words. He had seen the battle firsthand. He had watched the humans destroy ships that had raided successfully for decades, and he knew Ross was telling the simple truth. To the Galactic Council and all species listening, Kyle said, we offer this message. Earth and humanity are now part of this galaxy whether you welcome us or not. We will continue to expand, to explore, and to establish colonies on new worlds, and we will protect those colonies with everything we have. He leaned closer to the microphone, his voice carrying absolute certainty. If you ignore a human distress call, we will remember. If you prey on human civilians, we will respond. If you think our worlds are easy targets because we're new or because we come from a death world, you will learn otherwise. But, and here Kyle's tone softened slightly, we are not conquerors. We are not raiders. We seek peaceful relations with all species willing to treat us with respect. We will honor treaties. We will engage in fair trade. We will contribute to galactic civilization. Silith, listening from the council chamber, felt a strange sense of relief. The humans were angry at being ignored, but they were offering friendship to those who would accept it. Perhaps there was hope for peaceful coexistence after all. And to any species, human or otherwise, who finds themselves in danger, Kyle continued, you can call us. We will answer. We will come. We may be from a death world, but that just means we're very, very good at survival, and we're willing to share that strength with those who need it. Kyle ended the transmission with words that would be repeated across the galaxy for generations. This is Admiral Kyle Ross. We came for our own. We will always come for our own. Earth out. The silence after the transmission ended was profound. Then slowly the humans in the room began to clap. It started with Danny Hayes, then spread to the Marines, the officers, the crew members. Soon everyone was applauding, not just for the message, but for what it represented. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy on its own terms. Over the next few days, responses began arriving from across space. The Zenthari. Empire sent a formal diplomatic message requesting a meeting to discuss mutual interests. The Yilian Collective sent an apology for not responding to the distress call and a proposal for cultural exchange. Dozens of minor species sent messages of support or requests for alliance. Not all responses were positive. Some species sent warnings about human aggression. Others demanded the humans be quarantined to their section of space. But those messages were drowned out by the majority who saw opportunity in this new, powerful species. In the medical bay of the Valiant, Dr. Nina Carter was finishing her treatment of the last seriously injured colonist. The woman, a botanist named Carol Wright, had been caught in an explosion during the Vraken attack. Nina had spent 6 hours in surgery repairing the damage. How do you feel? Nina asked. Carol smiled weakly. Like I got blown up, but alive. Thanks to you and everyone who came for us. Just doing our job. No, Carol said firmly. You crossed 800 light years to save people you'd never met. That's not just a job. That's who you are. Nina felt a lump in her throat. She had treated thousands of patients in her career. But somehow this felt different. This felt important. On the colony's surface, the evacuation was nearly complete. Most civilians would be returning to Earth or relocating to safer colonies. Some, like Alan Price and Lisa Grant, had asked to stay and rebuild New Haven. Admiral Ross had agreed, but only with the condition that a permanent defense garrison would be established. Jake Sullivan walked through the colony one last time before departure. He passed the wall where Lisa had made her last stand, now being rebuilt by Marines and colonists working together. He saw the shelter where 300 humans had waited for rescue that almost didn't come. He saw the scorch marks from Vraken weapons and the impact craters from Marine drop pods. This place would be remembered. The colony where humanity learned it wasn't alone in the universe, and where the galaxy learned that humanity would always answer the call. Chris Bennett stood at the landing pad, watching his Marines board the shuttles. They were tired but satisfied. They had done their job perfectly. Not a single civilian casualty during the rescue. Not a single Marine lost in combat. It was a good operation. One of his younger Marines, Kenny Mills, approached. Commander, the colonists wanted me to give you this. He held out a patch handmade from local materials. It showed the New Haven colony symbol with the words, "We stand together," stitched below it. Chris took the patch, studying it carefully. Tell them we're honored. As the fleet prepared to leave orbit, Admiral Kyle Ross made one final entry in his log. Mission accomplished. New Haven colony secure. All civilians accounted for. No human casualties during the rescue operation. Fleet returning to Earth with valuable in